Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sheila Heschen, and I'm the Executive Director of Sales at the MGM National Harbor, and I'm Chair of the HSMAI DC Chapter Advisory Board. Today, we're continuing our mission of HSMAI, which is to fuel sales, inspire marketing, and optimize revenue. And since we're not able to meet in person, we're continuing our educational efforts virtually. This is the 7th webinar in our pandemic series, and we're so thankful that you're here. Every day we're hearing of additional hotels and venues reopening, so today's topic couldn't be more appropriate. We're hoping that by spending this hour with us, you'll be better prepared to deal with and adapt to the changes you'll see when you return to work. And today's panel was carefully selected to help guide you through the uncertainty that will no doubt be all around you. You will learn best practices for developing both a micro market and micro segment focused strategy to help you build success. Today's panel will be moderated by Jeff Rourke, Director of Sales with Ideas Revenue Solutions. Jeff is a passionate regional sales director specializing in enabling independent hotels to drive better revenue by pairing clients with cost-effective solutions, addressing revenue management challenges, and delivering successful and profitable outcomes. And for those listening in, if you have any questions for the panel, please enter them into the question box and we will be sure they get addressed. Also, please note that you will receive a link to today's recording. And with that, Jeff, take it away.
Thanks, Sheila. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce today's panelist. I'm going to start with you, JJ. JJ Ebuhawa. Such a fun name to say, by the way. She is the, right? It's not like it's Smith or something.
That was my maiden name.
Right. She got that. JJ is the Assistant Director of Sales and Marketing at the Hyatt Regency Dulles. She is an accomplished sales and marketing leader, where in her current role, she directs the efforts of a staff for group sales, business transient sales, and sales coordinators. And prior to the Hyatt Regency Dulles, JJ led and has been responsible for sales efforts at the Hyatt Fairfax, Hyatt Centric Arlington, and a Residence Inn by Marriott and Tyson's Corner. She is a member of the HSMAI Rising Sales Leader Council, which is part of the HSMAI Sales Advisory Board. And I have a couple of fun facts about JJ. Found this very interesting. She was originally going to school to be an American Sign Language interpreter, when her hospitality career took off and took her in a completely different direction. And she also loves motorcycles. Welcome, JJ.
Thank you.
And now James Cameron III. James is the Area Director of Revenue Management for the Lohr Group at the Riggs DC Hotel. James was born and raised in the suburbs of DC. He started his hospitality career as a bellman at the Hilton in Norfolk, Virginia, and he never looked back. He discovered his ultimate calling, revenue management, 14 years ago at that same property. His experience covers a vast range of hotels, from full to limited service, from convention to airport. He's been from New York to Philadelphia to Boca Raton, and prior to joining the team at Riggs, he worked at the DuPont Circle. And I have a couple of fun facts about James as well. I love these, by the way. James is ambidextrous with both his hands and feet, with his left hand being dominant. Another one is James's self-proclaimed sneaker vice. He has over 160 pairs of sneakers, which require a separate storage space. And in case anybody was wondering, his favorite shoe is the Air Jordan 3 Black Cement, which I have to admit, I had to look that up. And that's a pretty slick looking sneaker, James, so welcome.
Thank you.
And lastly, but certainly not least, is my friend and colleague, Digna Kohler. Digna works intimately with the hotels and airport car parks all over the world. Digna boasts a strong global background in consulting, change management, revenue management, and hotel operations, and strategic pricing. And as the regional head of advisory services at Ideas, Digna leads the global initiatives assisting companies of all sizes to build and enhance their revenue performance and price optimization capabilities, as well as developing internal best practices to help Ideas deliver world-class services. And prior to joining Ideas, Digna spent 11 years in leadership roles at Intercontinental Hotels Group. Her roles at IHG previously included the regional head of revenue management for Japan and Korea and Middle East and Africa, as well as the Global Pricing Implementation and Business Integration Manager. She currently lives in Southern California with her husband and 2 children. And I've had the pleasure of working Digna for almost 9 years, and she has been an absolute tremendous resource for me throughout my career here. A couple of fun facts about Digna. She's a Taurus, which I didn't know usually is described as a sign that doesn't like change. But the funny thing is that she's lived in 4 continents, 6 countries, 13 different cities throughout her life. And if you haven't done it, she says just trust her. Packing and moving your life across continents implies quite a bit of change. Another fun fact about Digna is her 2 children got their first passport when they were 2 months old. Her son has traveled through 3 different continents before reaching 2 years old, and she has to admit that her 20-month-old daughter is a bit behind as she's only done 2 continents, but she states that the COVID-19 has impacted her daughter's passport stamp collection. All right, so again, thank you, panelists. And as we get started, we don't have to look very far to find someone who's been impacted by this pandemic. And some of you on this webinar may have been impacted. And sadly, we all know how hard hit the hospitality industry has been. Many of our friends, our families, and clients have been displaced. And there are many, many informative webinars that are geared specifically around our industry's recovery. And we're going to touch on recovery too as part of this webinar. However, today is more focused on the furloughed or the laid off individual and helping those hoteliers assimilate back smoothly to work. And our focus is on providing insights and perspective to better position you for returning to your successful career, because whether you're going back to work at your previous property or starting at a new hotel, going back is not going to be the same as it was before. And as I began planning this webinar, I wanted to include a really diverse panel to be sure that we had something for everyone. And so I wanted to have this greater industry perspective, and that's what Digna is going to provide. But then I was looking for a sales and marketing perspective. I also wanted that brand hotel perspective and a property which has remained open throughout the pandemic. And that's what JJ is going to provide. And then lastly, I wanted that revenue management perspective. I wanted that independent hotel perspective also. And I wanted the perspective from a property that closed and is also reopening. And that's where James is going to provide some value there. So again, I'm thrilled to have these panelists today because they're going to cover all these areas and then some. And so let's go ahead and get started. And Digna, I'm going to start with you. So COVID-19 has brought us a lot of change and uncertainty on many levels, both personally and professionally. But I feel many of us believe that it's time to move on, and we want to find new ways for that new today at both a personal and professional level. So Digna, what are you seeing in the industry for how people are dealing with change and uncertainty?
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. It's a pleasure. Well, regardless of your zodiac sign, change has been challenging, and people has a tendency to accept it at a different pace, which is not uncommon. That's a normal human being thing. We basically saw at the beginning a bit more resistance in general. In the industry, we saw more people denying that this was going to impact us for a long term. We were thinking like, no, this is just we'll come out of this one pretty soon. And then people got very more afraid of what was happening, especially when we start seeing all those furloughs and things like that. But now we're hearing more positive stories. I think people are starting to see more what some of the returning kind of like pre-opening dates are being set. And that's kind of like very encouraging, kind of like regardless of the current professional situation or personal, there's more certainty that the recovery is going to come back, and then we're going to be able to stand up strong again. The uncertainty of how fast that's going to happen, it varies a lot by hotel, by city, by country. And the uncertainty around the type of business and share market that you're going to get, it also depends a lot about where you are and what kind of business you used to have. But more and more we see hoteliers starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And with that, they are starting to create new plans and strategies. And that is kind of like giving us a lot more focus on the opportunities and less on kind of like what we no longer going to have or we're not going to have in the short term. So it's kind of like becoming a more critical time for that planning for short-term actions with a long-term vision in a way. That's what we're hearing today.
Thanks, Digna. JJ, as you remained working, how did you prepare yourself to deal with the change and uncertainty?
You'll kind of hear the reoccurring theme throughout our conversation today because it is repetitive in nature. I mean, professionally, let me just say that, first of all, overall, it's been a different experience in Northern Virginia because we are moving into phase 3 when a lot of states are moving in the opposite direction. So as far as how I've seen people dealing with the change and uncertainty before I touch on myself, you know, the initial 30, 60 days, it was a lot of shock, anger. I'm not just talking the client side, I'm talking my colleagues as well in conversations I have with them, but panic, shock, anger, and as Digna said, you know, we all kind of thought we would just bounce back after a couple of months. So there were expectations set in the beginning that that would happen and that you would be back after 30 or 60 days. And then as we realized that this is not going anywhere, companies had to morph to that change. And unfortunately, some of those expectations that were initially set had to pivot to the new direction. So just managing through that personally, I had to make a lot of changes. I'll give the example that outside of work, I've never done yoga in my entire life, and I started doing it 10 minutes every morning. I've worked up to a nice 30-minute routine, but managing stress is the key to that. If it's not yoga, if you're a runner, a reader, whatever it is, you just really need to tap into that now more than ever in that self-care component because you're not doing anybody any favors by internalizing that stress. So personally, I've had to do really focus on self-care in any way I possibly can. I do have a toddler, so my other full-time job is being a mom when I leave here. And then for my clients, as they've navigated, I feel like they're still in it. I still feel like that shock and that the anger and the uncertainty is still there, and we're still navigating that with them, and it kind of changes every week. Every week it's something different, as I'm sure everybody else has experienced. So I don't want to give all the answers away now, but
okay. Well, great, thank you. James, I know you were briefly furloughed, but as you return to work, how did you prepare yourself to deal with the change in uncertainty coming back to Riggs?
Sure. So for me, I focused on myself, Jeff, and with that, my emotional health, and making that a priority for myself. And then once we reopened from my team as well, I think it's important to to be attentive to both the positive and the negative feelings, and then being able to understand how to handle those emotions in a clear way. We're all dealing with things personally and professionally, and I think generally speaking, we all try and do our best to not blur those lines and have something personally affect your professional experience. But with COVID-19, it's almost impossible to not. And so for me, just kind of focusing on my emotional health with everything being so fluid and opening dates changing multiple times,
right.
All of the new guidelines that are affecting kind of what we can do in terms of revenue maximization. It's difficult to not feel like, you're special, so to speak, with all the things that have happened, but, you're not. We have a lot of, friends and colleagues across different industries that have been impacted. And so I think sometimes when you can say to somebody, you're not alone, you're not in a unique circumstance, sometimes that helps, soften the blow just a bit.
Great, I completely agree. Thank you. It's realistic to consider as we get back into our jobs, we're going to start from scratch. In many cases, as many of the properties are treating reopening like a new hotel opening. And if your hotel didn't close, there's so many changes in place, which make it almost seem new, right? So as individuals, we're not coming back though empty-handed, as we've all learned a lot over the last few months, especially about ourselves and perhaps even our significant others. I don't know. But by sharing these learnings, we can better prepare hoteliers for their relaunch. So would each of you please share one learning personally that you've learned over the past 3 months? JJ, let's start with you.
It's hard to just put it one thing. I've learned pretty much every hourly position in the hotel since I've started. So that was a big one to take on. I would say that would probably be the biggest thing, is that you're just going to have to, there's nothing anymore that's not your job. If you're in that hotel, it's your job. And you are the brand, you are the product, which was always the case, but now more than ever, it's your time to shine and step up to the plate and really show what type of team player you are. So.
Sure, love that. James?
My inter-market relationships, just trying to, nurture this energy among my contemporaries, including but not limited to directors of revenue management or, my primary immediate market or neighborhood. Not all of the hotels in DC are open at the moment. And so, it's important to know what's happening with those hotels that are closed, when they're reopening, what they might be thinking in terms of offers, what they're doing. I like to look at DC, in quadrants. So we've got obviously Capitol Hill and Penn Quarter, downtown, DuPont Circle, the Wharf. What does, their demand tell you about your demand? And then, utilizing my existing network and, if I didn't have one, for example, starting one. And so just trying to connect with,
Right.
directors of sales and marketing, former colleagues, and then branching out even more into, New York City, LA, using LinkedIn as a resource as well. I think at this stage we're all connected. And so it's important to know kind of how each person, how each hotel, how each market is being affected.
I love LinkedIn. Love your answer. Thanks, James. Digna?
I think something that I've been learning a lot in the last couple of months is to listen with more understanding and empathy, and teach others around me to do the same thing. That has been very key. I've been working remotely for quite a few years, so I'm used to hear people more than see and just listen to them. And you can immediately see the struggle in their voices as all of these kind of situations have been going through. And that's when you reach out to them and kind of like just listen to their stories. There's not much I can do in many cases. I mean, I cannot help them. I mean, some of them are isolated. Some of them are just kind of like with kids running around, kind of like driving themselves crazy. But it's the listening that has created a stronger relationship, and just being able to mentor them how to release that frustration, that anger, all of that one sometimes has been very helpful. Understanding really and the empathy behind has been key. And I think it's very important that as we go back to work, and there's a lot of people that are going to be in different levels and situations, that we listen to them really to understand and just share some empathy there.
Great. I totally agree. Thank you. We've discussed preparing for change and uncertainty as part of this new work life. Can each of you give one example of something you've experienced which was totally unexpected, right? This could be a guest experience or a personal experience or a professional experience. I want you to share something that could help others prepare possibly for a similar type of unexpected experience, right? So it could be something like, oh my goodness, I never ever expected this. James, how about you go first?
Sure. So, for me, being in revenue management, I'm all about the money, obviously. And so with all the new cleanliness guidelines, with having rooms vacant for up to 24 or 48 hours, just thinking about, if we're sold out for a particular date, can we duplicate that the next night? We're obviously going to have people who are staying for one night. And so then we're obviously going to have, vacant rooms. In our hotel, we have a very unique suite product here at the hotel called the First Lady Suites. We only have 4 of them, and they're all extremely unique. And so I can't sell that room back to back. I can't have, you know, somebody stay in that room one night and then potentially book it the next night. And so just kind of thinking out loud how to logistically manage my house. You know, I've always on sold out nights looked at the house like Tetris, right? You know, on how to block people and things like that. But now it's even going to become a lot more complex and prohibit, you know, sometimes in certain instances you being sold out for multiple days in a row.
Got it. Thank you. Digna, something you never ever expected.
Oh my God, habits. I was quite shocked, to be honest with you, when we start all working remotely or kind of like in different situations, have people struggle with their routines and creating new routines, and they're all habits, and the good habits and the bad habits, whatever it was. But hearing people kind of like, oh, I miss my coffee because I drive to work and I pick up my coffee on the way, and then if I don't have that routine, and how we had to kind of like suggest, well, get dressed, drive your car, go pick up the coffee, and then go back home. It's like just do it. I think it's for me probably because I've been moving so much, I have less habits that restrain myself. But I do understand that it's a big thing, and as we're going to continue with this changing and uncertainty, I think we need to work a lot on developing a better process to create new habits, to kind of like adjust to the new routines, to the new today. So it's a lot of great books out there that help you how to create a new routine, how to go and do yoga outside, like JJ was mentioning, and also how to help our customers. Because I think about some of the customers are going to struggle when they come back to your hotels, and they're not going to be able to go and have their breakfast with the lunch that they usually like, because we're not going to have, or we're going to be able to provide that service or things like that. So we're going to need to be able to help them as well with those habits that they had that they probably were not going to be able to continue due to the circumstances. So
I agree. JJ, something you never expected.
Again, that's so hard to just give one.
You can give more than one.
Besides years of sales efforts being wiped out in less than 60 days, which was super depressing to see.
Right?
I would say the sales conversations and the direction that has gone, it still challenges me to this day. It is myself and my director of sales, so we do a really good job, and I think this is a really important key to take away, is that you need that partner in the sales office, whether, or if you're a single seller at GM, that you can partner with. And I don't, not necessarily good cop, bad cop in all situations, but just maybe somebody where you're just hitting a point where the conversation's not being productive anymore with the client, to then bring in an additional person. That's needed now more than ever also. And but when I mean the sales conversations, I specifically mean that they're not your typical sales conversations. It's, although you're busy all day long doing things, it's not producing revenue. So when you're reporting on that at the end of the week, it's like, oh, well, you've only had 2 leads. Yes, well, I've had 3 45-minute long conversations about cancellations and rebookings, and then I had to sit on a call with their board members and dissect the contract and whether it is or is not covered under force majeure for a Q1 2021 booking. And you know, we really strive to come to a solution, an amicable solution through those conversations without it escalating. So you need to have a lot of conversations, and you need to take things back to the drawing board and see what's going to position your hotel for success, and it's your responsibility to maintain that relationship with the client through this. Just keep that in mind as you move forward working post-pandemic, is that they're going to come to you and it's going to seem very one-sided. But at the end of this, you need to be able to work with them in a year or 2 from now. And you don't want to be that person that's left a bad taste in their mouth with the brand, with the hotel, a repeat client that's been there for years. You just take a break, step back, try to look at other solutions. If you know, the conversation's not going the direction you want, pull in another source if you need to. It's not your typical sales conversations, and you'll be very, very busy with those conversations on a day-to-day basis. So
Great.
that's the big thing.
Thanks, everyone. Next question. So I'm a firm believer that we're all leaders. Um, So I'm interested in what's the most important leadership quality that you would consider to be more relevant today, now, as hoteliers transition back to their jobs, right? So understanding the circumstances that hotels are facing today, reduction in staff, high focus on health and safety, competitive environment, changes in consumer behavior, the industry's recovery, I mean, everything, considering all of that. What's the most important leadership quality you consider to be more relevant now than ever before? Digna, what do you think?
Collaboration, and both JJ and James already spoke about it in different ways, but collaboration and influence is one of the key capabilities that we should show, or is more relevant at this stage than before. As JJ mentioned, is basically we're going to be wearing multiple hats. It's no longer, that's not my job, it's everybody's job, and we're going to be asked to be wearing a lot of hats. But at the same time, we're going to be asked to be innovative, creative, so that we can come up with new ways of creating business for our hotels and new strategies. And in my experience, groups work much better when we're trying to kind of come up with new ideas. So that's kind of like being open to collaborate as a team so that we can create new ideas internally, and as well as James mentioned it, collaborate with the outside, with the different, whether it's the other sales guys, or whether it's the partners around your hotel, the restaurants, the bars, the whatever is attracting out there. You need to create a bigger collaboration with those teams, because it's not about helping your hotel only, it's about helping the community as well, because that's going to bring back everybody. This has impacted everybody, and we're just kind of looking for collaboration in many directions. So that for me is key at this stage.
Great, love it. JJ?
I would say compassion and empathy, and specifically empathy and the want to help and assist, which is needed, and passion. So one of those is really self-focused, the other is outward looking. And I'd say that, the compassion or the empathy component of it is just emotionally supporting your colleagues and identifying when they may need breaks or support as they're returning to work. Because although, for myself, I've been working through it and change is constant and it's still difficult, but at least I've hit a stride in whatever way I can with that. But your colleagues haven't experienced that yet, so they'll be coming back in the constant change. You'll see the stress on their face. So when you see that, let them go at 3, go home, take a break. You'll be back tomorrow, or I'll cover your MOD shift on Saturday, which my director did for me one Saturday, and it was a game changer, just having 2 days off before you come back and you're back in it. So that would be the biggest thing. And the passion, reignite yourself. Another thing I learned through this is that this is what I want to do, and this is my passion still. And no matter how difficult it is, I'm going to do what I have to do every day because I want to be here. And if you were on the fence before, this will really help you decide the direction you want to move. But gearing back to your question, that passion and that empathy it all kind of ties into joy and celebrating the wins, the small wins as a team, and having open, honest communication. I feel like all of it kind of plays together to create an atmosphere in a workplace that you and your colleagues as they return will want to be. And as a leader, no matter if you're having a bad day or not, you're setting that tone. It's a trickle-down effect. So this is greater than you. If you need to take a break, but just know that what you're doing will affect everybody around you as a leader. So being mindful.
James, the most important leadership quality you consider to be more relevant today than before?
Yeah, Jeff, I think we're all using relatively similar, adjectives. For me, it's going to be transparency. I think in this climate, people deserve it more than ever before, the financial component aside, and that has been huge for many people. We don't know the extent to which this has affected people. And then following that up with some positive reinforcement. It's difficult, as everyone said, friends didn't come back to work or not coming back to work. Once they do come back, they may not get their 40 hours every week consistently. you know, for the food and beverage servers and the bussers, et cetera. The tip money is not going to be the same as it once before. You know, nearly everything as we once knew it, at least in the short term, is no longer. And I know that, you know, most people across the industry try and practice this as best as they possibly can. But I think, you know, in the climate that we're in, you know, our team members deserve it more now than they ever did before.
I agree. Great. Let's move on to regulations. So regulations are different depending on the state and even the county or the city as when and how lockdowns are being lifted or made less restricted. So thus the demand and consumer behavior is being impacted largely by these regulations and the way the individuals react to them and the different approaches that hotels are taking are going to make it very difficult for us to believe that this one size strategy will fit all and for a long-term period. So much of what I've seen, much of the indications I've seen are that hotels need to become more micro market and micro segment focused with this very agile approach. So do you or don't agree with that? If you don't, why not? If you do, what are some of the best practices that you can recommend for hoteliers to look more into their hotel's individual's market to create that micro segment focused strategy? JJ, I'll start with you.
So we have something called lights out. So you want to know what's going on with your competitor. Well, sorry, first of all, Jeff, yes, I do agree with that. I do feel that there is some large market stuff out there, but I'll touch on that later. What I'm seeing pick up in the month for the month is mainly event and Smurf. So that's definitely local market. But going back to lights out, first and foremost, how can you sell against your competitors that are still open if you don't know what their offerings are, and everything's so different across the board. So drive around in your star comp and your secondary comp, sit in the hotel in the morning, sit in the hotel in the evening, especially if you see, even if it's 13, 14 rooms pop up in Agency 360, showing that they're getting some transient production. You know, what's their F&B offerings? Are the hoteliers, what does their PPE look like within the hotel? Is their front desk agent wearing it? So I think the food and beverage component is a big thing too, because that's been a huge driver for the transient market. We've noticed at our property, we're an airport hotel. So whether we do or do not serve certain meals, then it can really make or break whether they're going to stay with your property. So yeah, the lights out, drive around or whatever you want to call it, driving around your comp and just knowing what everybody else is offering, and collaborate with the local DOSMs or the GMs can do the same thing. Just have a conversation and across brand. It doesn't hurt to collaborate, as everybody's been saying. So set up a call and connect with each other. And I would say the other thing is local accounts. You can literally drive around and see if their parking lots are full. You're going to have to hit the streets. It won't be your typical sales call going in, dropping off cookies, but really gauging the workplaces and seeing what the volume is. You know, one company may still allow their employees to work from home, and it's an LNR, so you're not getting that mass distribution email from, let's say, Amazon or Microsoft saying, hey, all of our employees till the end of 2020 are working remote. So you have to do a little bit more investigative work yourself, but you'll be able to see that driving around. And then the last thing I would say, your funnel's now empty. It's the middle of RFP season. I'm with Hyatt, but across brands, my other hotelier friends have stated that clients have shown interest in pushing through this RFP season and renegotiating. And at first, there was a lot of talk about just pushing rates through and keeping them flat through 2021 to kind of miss RFP season. But I think the clients are trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Find more value by renegotiating lower rates, maybe taking advantage of some properties that are willing to drop down. My advice to you is don't do it. Stay uniform, stay where you normally stay at your rate, charities. And then also, if you need to push into Dynamic's the way to go this RFP season, so you're not sacrificing rate into the new year. So, and then for your funnel, it's all about Smurf social. So collaborating with your local venues, seeing what properties may have closed, and if you can assist them with taking some of their displaced groups, which we've experienced. So, but pretty much everything's event driven in the month for the month.
Great, thank you. James, what's your view on how to do individual markets to create micro-segment focused strategies?
Sure. So for starters, I wholeheartedly agree with that being the premise and the direction that most of us should take. For me, it's just about placing a heightened emphasis on my feeder markets. And then within that, specifically the cities that are within like a 5-hour drive. So New York City, Jersey, Philadelphia, Delaware, Baltimore, those areas. And then if you're fortunate enough to have some money to spend on advertising, targeting those specific cities, and then, working with your marketing team is paramount. For me, I do not have a flag outside of our hotel with a big M or an H in front of it. And so it's just really getting grassroots into the nitty gritty and working with my marketing director, our website developers, the people who are doing the digital marketing, the SEO optimization, all that sort of good stuff. Also using our CRM to communicate to as broad of an audience as possible. Unfortunately, we were only open for 45 days before we had to temporarily dim our lights, as my general manager called it, due to COVID-19. So we don't have a large database, but our sales team has put in efforts as well to expand that, and then just using that to the best of its abilities. Lastly, for me, looking at hotels in similar markets and then seeing what they're doing, and then doing it too. So, for me, I've always been a huge proponent of stealing ideas from other places and then putting my own unique spin on it to make it pertinent to DC. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, I'm a huge believer in that.
Perfect, thank you. Digna?
Well, definitely agree with the statement. And as I mentioned earlier, the circumstances vary a lot by hotel. Some hotels are probably more used to have local customers, so for them it's going to be kind of an easier path to kind of like continue doing what they used to do. But there are other hotels that were more reliable on other markets that are no longer coming, or they're going to be faced with a totally unknown customer potentially. So in those cases, I will definitely recommend for them to investigate a little bit more of what is driving those new customers to your hotel. What is their incentive? I mean, we know that we keep hearing that leisure is going to keep coming first because people is trying to reach out to their families, kind of like, or small businesses are not as strict as the big corporations, and they're allowed to travel. But that you're going to find out that one just by talking to your local accounts, by kind of like finding out, is it flexibility? Are they going to be able to travel, yes or no? Or talking to your customers, whoever is reaching to you, ask them why. That also gives you an opportunity to hear their stories. I believe a lot that opening to hear stories, especially when today we are so afraid of that close contact, but at the same we need to talk. Kind of like it's important that we teach our staff to listen to their stories, because they're going to share what brings them to town and what they are, why are they in the hotel, what do they pick our hotel, and that will help us create better offers for them. And think about it, not only, okay, they're here for a bed, they're here for other reasons, and I could potentially create offers that include more food and beverage, or kind of like small meetings for them to meet with their family members that creates more space than just being them in one house. There's a lot of things that you can come up with ideas if you hear why people is coming to you. So that's kind of like very important. And also don't forget to work closely with your local business to kind of like see how you all can come together with an offer that will potentially, if I only have a restaurant, I don't want to give my customers only one choice. It's like, hey, we also have this restaurants around that can deliver and they can kind of like come to you so you have more choices. Creating that sort of things will help you really attract not only the customers that are out there at the moment, but also attract more revenue to your hotel somehow. Kind of like work on creating more revenue. Total revenue is kind of like is the key as well at this stage.
Perfect. Thank you. Love that. James and JJ, as we're all doing more with less during these unprecedented times, how's technology helping each of you be more productive and more efficient? James, you want to start?
Sure. So technology is aiding me, Jeff, in keeping my finger on the pulse of the market and supporting making the best business decisions for my hotel. We've got webinars, Zoom or Microsoft Teams meetings with market managers from various OTAs, and then just also using my existing resources in a different way. I reevaluated how I was using TravelClick, Star, and then most importantly, my RMS ideas. So, ensuring my RMS has the most up-to-date information directly impacts my pricing, forecasting, and my overall performance. And so, with things not being as busy as they normally would, it's really given me an opportunity to reevaluate and sit and contemplate exactly what I'm doing moving forward as I set new goals and targets for the back half of 2020.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for that. JJ?
So for me on the sales front, I would say virtual offerings. If it's the way to go, it's the future, it's in high demand. Everybody asks for it from Smurf to corporate. So if your AV team or partner or contractor is out, I encourage you to reach out to them now and start troubleshooting or creating a package to see what equipment they need to get. And then on the marketing side, putting together the collateral so it's an easy sell. I mean, we've broadcasted weddings, and as far as even 2021 offerings, they want that virtual component. So that would be the biggest thing. The other thing is LinkedIn is now the new virtual handshake. So we can't do our typical site visits for the most part. And as soon as I make contact with somebody, I try to connect with them on LinkedIn so that they can see who I am and what my credentials are. And I can't have that face-to-face conversation with you. So I'm gonna try to connect with you that way. So those would be the two biggest things on top of the things that James mentioned, which are all great. So
I love LinkedIn. Big fan. All right, James, I have one specifically for you. So I'm curious on your perspective, has the pandemic threatened the existence of revenue managers and the revenue management discipline, or has it created an opportunity for revenue leaders to secure a more leadership role in the greater commercial organization?
So clearly I'm going to be a little biased, right? You're asking me this question. But I wholeheartedly don't believe that it's threatened our existence at all. Honestly, if anything, I believe it's actually enhanced it. Pre-pandemic, our discipline, I believe, has been valued more and more. A lot of us are on the executive committee in our hotels. We have even greater influence than we did before on group and catering decisions for the hotel. But I think what even exceeds all of those, honestly, is just the forecasting, and the forecasting accuracy in all of our hotels is always crucial. But with the top line being so unpredictable, giving your GM and your director of finance confidence when they're managing their expenses is vital. And it's going to be really what allows some of us to succeed and make it through the remainder of whatever we're experiencing with the pandemic and not.
I absolutely agree. Fantastic. JJ, now I have one just for you. So what's been your sales experience? And I know you've touched on it a little bit and the pipeline and whatnot, but what's been your sales experience as your hotel never closed and remained open? Have you been busy? Have you closed much business? Have you benefited from being one of the few hotels open?
Whatever I could get my claws into. So yes, we've been booking business. We held our first meeting from the point of the pandemic, mid-June. And I'll tell you this now, phone inquiries. I mean, 80% of the leads that I've turned have been phone inquiries. So if your phones are not being monitored right now, it's a huge loss. Some of the calls I even got, the clients said that it was a large market association business, and they said that the person that the property they were trying to work with, they couldn't get anybody on the phone. So that would be, yes, we've been very busy. It's busy for 2 people. Whether it would be busy for a team of 12, no. Especially since a lot of the conversations, as I touched on earlier, are very time consuming, but not really new revenue generating conversations. So very busy, and still to this day, very busy with those conversations. So in the beginning, the term we were using was the Wild West. So the first 30 days were the Wild West. I mean, if there could be guerrilla warfare in hotels, it was that. So, and I'll give the example that my director of sales really pushed going up to the hotel, which was great because we got room nights from it, but literally driving up to the airport with our shuttle, with our doors open, and she'd create a signage, like a little sandwich board with whatever flight that was arriving in that language saying, welcome to the Hyatt, the Hyatt Regency Dulles has rooms. And people they were being shipped back home. Specifically, federal employees were being shipped back to the United States at first that had no place to go. But in general, we were finding if you pull up with the shuttle, people would get on. Now, after the 30 days, we started to have more conversations with our large market groups that were definite on the books, that were trying to manage what they had on with us towards the end of 2020. So transient wise, we were in single digits for a while. We're maintaining around 50 to 60 rooms now, but we get surges. That's something I never expected. So you're short staffed, you're staffed appropriately for what you have going on in the hotel, but if there's a canceled flight, and specifically an airport hotel, so this is a big transient driver for us, 77 room nights would pick up on a Sunday night, and then you have 13 people that all hands on deck. So that was something that I haven't anticipated, but my recommendation to everyone would be, especially on the operations side, make sure that you're PMing your rooms and that you really understand your inventory for what was out of service for the longest time. Walking it, do all hands on deck, have everybody walk floors together, pair up, and just see what your inventory is. So when you do get any sort of surge, you're ready for it. And if you're not an airport hotel, other surges have been National Guard being shipped to a specific area, and that's not the civil discord. It's going to continue to happen. So whatever market you're in, you could see that. You could see National Guard or Army or military picking up, which we've seen in Washington, D.C. So surges of any kind, you can best prepare yourself by having your rooms inventory ready, and then having a cross-trained staff so that whoever is on deck can jump in and operate as manager on duty. So that would be the biggest thing.
Thank you. Digna, I think about this total revenue management concept that's been around for a few years. I've been thinking about all these hospitality silos that sometimes make that a bit challenging, right? Because those still exist today within departments like sales and marketing and distribution and revenue management and digital marketing. So I'm curious your perspective on what do you think the commercial strategy structure will look like in this post-pandemic environment? Do you see consolidations? Do you see more collaborations? What's the hierarchy going to look like? Share some insight on that.
Absolutely. I think the key will be collaboration, as we mentioned it earlier. We're being forced to break those silos because of the different circumstances. We're just being forced to break it, to have a stronger communication collaboration as we set up our strategies. That's going to continue to happen. In terms of consolidations, I think we might be able to kind of like wear multiple hats at the beginning, but eventually kind of there's a whole evolution of the roles. As JJ was mentioned, kind of like sales is now moving into more virtual, and our marketing is more digital. It's kind of all of those ones are going to create kind of like the roles to evolve in a different way, to kind of like move forward slightly different. So I think it's going to be hard to maintain that multiple hats, but the collaboration will stay there. Now, what's the structure going to look like? for years, I mean, being in the industry for quite a long time, I've seen people trying to change how the organizational structure looks like for years, but I don't think we're going to be able to reach something that is generalized and standardized across all the hotels and all of the countries. So I think that's going to continue to vary a lot depending on if it's an independent property versus a corporate. It's going to be dictated by different kind of like factors behind the scenes. So I don't think we're going to start seeing that one immediately. In the medium, kind of like longer term, probably yes, because things need to change. There's no question about it. But the collaboration is something that will happen immediately.
Okay, great. Let's go with, Dick, I think I'm going to stay with you. So I'm looking at, so we got roughly 10 minutes left. I got 2 questions, so we're right on schedule. I'm going to stay with you to start this next question. In your opinion, what does 2021 look like for transient and group? And will hotels get back to pre-pandemic levels next year, or will it take into 2022 or longer?
Unfortunately, I think we're not going to be able to see the pre-pandemic levels in 2021. We're still seeing and hearing cases continue to rise, and that creates always a kind of like 1 step forward, 2 step backwards at a certain point. So we're going to be heavily impacted. There's a slow corporate and group demand that is going to continue happening through the year. We hear that most of the major corporations are kind of like being extremely careful, and they're limiting non-essential travel business for the rest of 2020 and even Q1 of 2021. So all of that one is going to have an impact. So for 2021, I definitely don't believe it's going to be happening. But for 22, probably we're going to start seeing some better numbers. Also, we need to keep in mind that the way people is going to do business, as JJ was mentioning, the virtual options is going to have an impact in terms of number of attendees that we're going to have in certain hotels. If they were depending on groups, and now those groups are becoming like half because they're going to be having a split sort of a scenario, half of them virtual, half of them coming to on site, or some just going to try to handle things virtually. All of that one is going to have a big impact in terms of demand. People is going to start testing all of these scenarios, and I think that is going to happen more towards 2021. So we may have a better idea by the end of mid of 2021 when I think it's going to go back to what we kind of like pre-pandemic, if we get that one. I keep hearing a lot about 2023 in terms of RevPAR, but that is kind of like assuming that occupancy is going to come back and that we're not going to see that drop in ADR, which at the moment, just kind of like sometimes it gets into the panic mode, and I hope that people is not going to go into that panic mode too much, dropping the rates, because that's going to impact everybody else, and you know that recovering from that is just going to take longer if we go into that journey. So hopefully we'll just focus on, okay, we'll maintain more or less an ADR to the levels that we had it, and occupancy will slowly come back to us. Yes, it may take 1 or 2 more years, kind of like even more potential in some areas because of the type of business. But we'll see, we have a better idea in the next year, probably what's going to happen in 2021, just to see how people, I see that people is going to change how they do business, but then it's going to be a trial period. People, like we are testing at the moment, working from home, actually works well. Until a certain point, we'll be like, yeah, I'd rather go back to an office. That may happen. So.
Okay. Quickly here, if you'll put on, look into your crystal balls, James and JJ, specifically in the DC market, what do you think, JJ?
Everything Digna said, she hit it right on the head. I feel like transient won't be coming back even remotely close to the levels we saw in 2019, at least until 3 years out. People are saying that virtual meetings are working efficiently. Actually, they're probably, my husband works for a big company in the area, and the company has found that people are more productive at home than they are in the office. So that's really going to affect transient travel. And don't drop rates. Don't drop rates. I'll say it one more time.
Please,
it's going to take forever to get back to where we were at. So if you want to see those pre-pandemic rates, then don't drop them now. But that said, for group, I'll focus a little more on the group component. Pharma, pharma is a great target right now. It's a booming industry, and corporate as well, depending on your market. Those are great groups to go after, but you're really going to have to be flexible with your terms and create that trust. So that'll be a new component to the sale, is that creating that trust. And what I mean by that is you have to be the expert in the new standards. And what the state and local mandates are, and what the hotel is doing to help assist the group with adhering to all of those mandates, because it is not a responsibility to police them. We will give them all of the tools in place to do that. So to adhere to the standards, and we will be the experts to that. That could be a great way to set yourself up for success as you move back into if you're a salesperson, into a sales role, or really across any role in the hotel, just being the expert in those areas. But so the reason why I went off on that is because when you're making the sale, you have to make those recommendations. So having great collateral in place with pictures and setting up what your set looks like at 50% capacity, taking photos, putting the collateral together, and then blasting that out to your clients, especially your repeat clients, saying, hey, you know, just letting you know, this is where Virginia's at, and this is what it looks like for your meeting of 50 people at 50% capacity, or, you know.
Okay.
So DC market, pharma, government, corporate, I feel like those are the first groups that are gonna, and the groups that really have reached out for 2021 and beyond as well.
Thank you. James, very quickly, could you give us your perspective on the DC market in the future? And then I'll close us with a final question.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's just important to mention from the macro level, something that I read last week from Jan Freitag, who's the Senior Vice President of Lodging Insights for North America with STAR. And he said in his projections that, you know, occupancy levels probably won't return to what their 20-year average has been until 2023, and then average rate for 5 years. So, you know, essentially the low occupancy and the influence of discounting, which the ladies have spoken to, with hotels trying to compete for market share, that the ADR growth will happen at a much slower rate. You know, and I think for DC at a micro level, it's a very dynamic market, as everyone knows. I think if the museums reopen and we see some sort of resemblance of government travel and whatever capacity that's going to be moving forward, we have some pockets of decent demand, but nothing consistent for, I think, quite some time. It's very difficult for me to see any citywides happening, meetings, marathons, sporting events, etc., until there's a vaccine for COVID-19. And you know, I spoke earlier about the drive-in market. One can only rely on so much of that, and so we really need the airline industry to spearhead this revival for us.
Awesome, thank you. All right, final question, kind of a fun one here. As we head back into the back half of 2020, what do each one of you look forward to the most? So name one thing personally and one thing professionally you look forward to the most the remaining 6 months of this year. JJ, kick us off.
Becoming the 5.0 version of myself. So the metamorphosis is happening now, and you know, it completely makes you stronger. So I'm just looking forward to that growth, because growth is never comfortable. And so I know there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm gonna enjoy telling the story one day.
Right.
So, and then just seeing my colleagues return, I miss them so much. I've made lifelong friends in my hotels that I've worked at, and I miss them all so much, and I hate seeing them in pain and their suffering. So get a little emotional when I even say that, I'm sorry. So yeah, just seeing them come back to work.
Understood. James, one thing personally and professionally you look forward to the rest of the year?
Sure. So as you know, Jeff, for me personally, it's going to be
Right.
my first child coming. So my wife is due in a little over than a month. We're extremely excited. So that's definitely at the top of my list. And then, you know, given the current state of events across the country, it just really starts to put things into even more perspective to me. But professionally, you know, although working from home has its perks, I miss my team a lot. I miss my team. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the healthy conversations about business with my sales team. I miss mentoring my reservations team. I miss the people, and I know some of us in revenue are a little bit more recluse like some of the folks in accounting. I hope none of them are on the call. But that's who we're here for ultimately at the end of the day, the internal and external guest.
I would assume that your son's going to come home in some sort of little pair of baby sneakers, and I don't know.
Well, the NBA playoffs are starting pretty soon here, Jeff. So we've got a new Lakers fan onesie that he's probably going to be decked out in for the playoffs. Yeah.
There we go. All right. Thank you. Digna, close us out. One thing personally and one thing professionally you look forward to in the back half of 2020.
Traveling, both professionally and personally.
Surprise. Right.
Professionally, because I want to go out there and help organizations to adapt to the new today. I call it the new today, and I love that one. And personally, because I miss my family and friends. I just miss people. So that both of them is the same, traveling. Can't wait.
No shock there. Let's see. So unless we receive any questions for the panelists, which I'm not seeing, that's all I have. I do want to offer my sincere thanks to all of you, to Digna, to JJ and James. Thank you for participating in today's webinar. I also want to thank Ellen and Sheila at HSMAI DC chapter for their support of this webinar. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Sheila to wrap us up.
Thank you so very much. And so Jeff, thank you so much for moderating today's panel and for crafting such thought-provoking questions.
My
And
pleasure.
to our panelists, JJ, James, and Digna, thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts and insights as we move through the next phases of our new normal. Discussing key items such as compassion, empathy, communication, transparency are so very important. And for all that joined us, we hope you gained some helpful takeaways. Remember, you will receive a link to today's recording. We're also proud to announce that HSMAI is seeking nominations for Hospitality Heroes. Regardless of the circumstances, heroes rise to meet the occasion. Please consider nominating an industry professional you think deserves recognition for their efforts to take a leadership position, champion a cause, or create a program or opportunity that's directly benefited industry workers, medical personnel, first responders, or communities impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. To nominate a hero, please visit hsmaidc.com. Also, please consider taking advantage of the 3 HSMAI certifications. Nearly 30 years ago, HSMAI introduced certifications for hotel sales professionals, and today training and credentialing is offered in several disciplines, including revenue management, business acumen, and digital marketing. You can find more information at hsmai.org/certification. And lastly, on behalf of Ellen Wilson, Managing Director, and our entire advisory board, we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. This now ends our webinar.